So we're talking leadership, legacy, haves, have-nots. I mean, I like that I got to that point, and you touched on that with African Town. I touched on Dennis Archer. Dennis Archer is a classic example of when we think of leadership. I feel as though a lot of the people throughout the Black community feel as though he did not align with the Black community. His ideology was not there. Right. And on the other side, grander society, white society, look at him as he was the greatest mayor in recent history for the city of Detroit. Help get the city shaped up and everything. Legacy, leadership, as you definitely think from an individual perspective, because it's a way to be in the role of leadership and build a legacy where you will be applauded from America, but looked at from the community as, like you say, that sellout card is going to come fast.
Again, I think it goes back to the ideology, right? And two prominent ideologies that has been at the center or three of Black folks in America. Either we go back to Africa, how do we integrate in America and be full Americans, or we separate and do our own or be independent. And those three ideologies are still shaping us in some forms. Some of us, it may be more prominent than others. And if you're honest with yourself and you go back and re-examine, you'll find yourself somewhere either on one of those timelines or in between. And so when you look at a Dennis Archer, and even going back to Coleman Young, right? And to talk about Coleman Young in a negative way is like it's like the Antichrist. And here
it can be sacrilegious in Detroit.
And because of his association with the leftist Marxists, I think he gets more credit as being more radical than he was. He was a politician at the end of the day, right? But his interest came out of Black bottom. I think that kept him grounded. Mm-hmm. Where you look at a Dennis Archer, he's Black, but he doesn't come out of a Black bottom. He comes out of a different community, even though he may come out of poverty. And then again, many of us, if we go back to talk, poverty is such a hard pill to swallow, right? Man, I ain't going back to that shit. Don't. Like if you try to drive a motherfucker on decks, they gonna fight you. They probably put like, man, you take me over there, I'm a kid, because it brings so much misery and pain, and it's legit at the same time. But we cannot heal what we're afraid to confront, and as a result, we're trying to fathom something different for our people. Again, using white theories as a solution for Black phenomena. And as I said earlier, the dynamic of, because there's been times when through my process, through my growth, through my transformation, through becoming who I am, where I found myself in like when I was working at the Bog, doing work with the Bog Center, and which is a very alternative crowd, and I'm very grateful for that. But it was, when I think back, there was a lot of contradictions, because they're not Black per se. So they didn't understand the Black struggle in the way I understood it, particularly in my time period. So there was some bumping of some heads, but then also in that same token, I had a relationship with Wendell Anthony over a fellowship. Because again, once someone sees some potential in you, they try to scoop you up. They try to pull you up under their wing, right? And everybody's trying to shape me to be a certain type of way. And for me, I had to keep that word again, play the game. You had to learn how to play the game to some degree to figure out how to do for yourself, right? But also you're trying to work with other Black people, but they're trying to get you to work a certain way. Yeah. And they're not realizing, at my core, I'm for Black liberation. In my core, I'm for Black liberation. So, but I learn how to coexist and engage and whatnot. And I bring that up. I'm gonna write about it more in my book that my new book I'm gonna work on. But it's these things, like when we think about our own individual experience, we've engaged in those things in some way, and because of I use Wendell for example, right? Depending on what time period. When Wendell was on Dexter and Elmhurst, that's a different Wendell. Matter of fact, he didn't even go by Wendell. He had an African name. Like if someone like, damn, Wendell Anthony had an African name. He was out there organizing, engaging the Young Boys Incorporated, et cetera, et cetera. But the Wendell today is not the same Wendell. Not meaning that we can't grow, we can't change. But the question is, what we have to ask is the interest. Has the interest changed? Mm-hmm. of what's determining how we're moving and what decisions that we're making and how, because again, all of us, we deal with people outside our community, good, bad, or they're different, right? But at the end of the day, no one can ever question my interests. And I mean, people would respect me, people disagree with me, but they'll always say that motherfucker, he fight for his neighborhood. He fight for his neighborhood. That's what he do. That's one thing that motherfucker could do. He gonna fight for black folks. He consistent on that, right? He may say some shit that you may not like, he may cuss you out. He may look like he gonna hit you, but he gonna stay consistent with that, right? And that's the key word, consistency. And this is what contributing to the breakdown of what legacy leadership looks like. And there's an individual, I mean, just name them, right? Because I hate talking in code and shit, like Malik Shabazz. I respect Malik Shabazz on some level, right? But again, since there was no organization, there was no elders to hold him accountable, he became a community mercenary. Time out.
I got to bring the camera back to me. I never even heard that term before. Community mercenary. That's a new one that I'm going to definitely attribute to you. That's a deep one. Continue.
Yeah, and so many of us, become that community mercenaries because, again, why we live in a capitalist society. What we know about in community organizing and activism, that's a payless job. Ain't no healthcare in that fucking job.
No.
So if you've been on the front line and now expanding the conversation for how many years, who doesn't want to feel worthy of what they've done, what they've contributed? And this is where it gets complicated. And I am under belief. I was thinking the other morning, like, we can't afford to throw no black person away.
I agree with you there too.
However, we have to examine every black person to be able to understand, like Elgin Cleaver, like most like, man, I am that motherfucker. He ended up being turned crazy as hell. He did. But we have to still examine him. Because why? There's an Elgin Cleaver in our community today who's behaving just like him. Egomaniac.
And also to that point, I also think that this kind of goes back to that same discussion we've been having more and more, like discourse. We got to be able to have discourse and hold people accountable and have those uncomfortable conversations amongst one another, because one of the key points about this law definitely, I think, goes into intentionality too. And when you're younger, or even if you're older, the understanding is that every person is moving with an intentionality, but sometimes I believe this is due to a defense mechanism. Sometimes our intentionality is just because another person's doing it. It's like, hey, Yusef asked me for this, and then it's going to be a level of trust there. But then you have to have the willingness to say, all right, Yusef, you're introducing me to this project. Who are the people? What are the terms? What's the logistics? Are there costs? Who else will be involved? How will we execute this? We had a discussion like that yesterday about a project that you just asked me to onboard for.
Right.
As close as we are, we still have that discussion. And for some people, that discussion is tougher to have, because if you're out here protesting every day and then we're marching in front of this restaurant or this liquor store or this gas station, and then it's like, all right, 1 second. All right, what about this? I know the problem. What's the intentionality? What role do I play? I mean, even having that, how do we get to that point of being comfortable enough to ask these questions that can be challenging questions?
We have to be fearless. We have to be caring, loving, and very, very critical, right? And there, like I said earlier, all of us in this room may feel powerless at some point because of our own individual position, but in reality, there's power in there. And that power grows once we connect and build and find a commonality amongst each other. And that commonality is not rooted in whether we like each other. That commonality is rooted in our values, a common value system. Values trumps like. And I think that's where we've gotten away from in our struggle. That's where we got away from in our work. Like, again, we don't all have to agree. We can all share different ideology. And like, our history teaches us that. And I think we're not sophisticated enough because we don't want to do that work. We're not white lazy, we're black lazy. And what I mean by black lazy, like we're not doing our own work of studying our own selves to learn what we need to learn, because it's there. It's all there to learn from and to develop. But then again, what's happening is they're picking us off because they're, Juwan, you're doing good. Quasi, you're doing good. Truth, you're doing, like we're not, we're no longer the black fist. We're the individuals. But we only come to black fist and stuff like this. But this is temporary, where we're dealing with permanent shit. And also, too, again, Quasi and I was talking this morning, and one thing that came out of it we don't talk about is trust. How many, a lot of folks in this room, we know each other, but how many people in this room you really trust? No, it's something like, and we're talking about, we use the S word a lot, struggle. If there's no trust, there's no struggle. And until we develop and frame that, then that because that's what our elder generation, they had us beat at. Even though they fucked up a lot, they trusted each other. They got in the trenches, they got in the weeds. I mean, Fred, like we all lift up Fred Hampton. He was a dynamic brother. He fell up under the leadership of Bobby Seale and UAP Newton. He didn't want to be the grand leader. He could have. Bunchy Carter, damn, in his own right. I mean, we can go on down the list. Like Malcolm wasn't trying to take Elijah Muhammad's place. It was what people fed Elijah and what others fed because, again, their interest was for themselves, and they knew Malcolm's interest was for black people. And what Malcolm said, I can deal with a lot of things, but I couldn't deal with was betrayal. That hurted me more than any. Why? Because what we don't talk about with Malcolm and Elijah, they also had like a father and son relationship. That hurt him to his core. But again, my point is, though, Malcolm was not trying to replace Elijah Muhammad. But in this room, how many of us can get behind a Lauren Hood? How many of us can get behind a Cuddy and saying that we're going to work together? Like that takes some real deep soul searching and also figuring out, like, okay, we're going to be behind Lauren tomorrow. We're going to be behind such and such the next day. Like creating this, but how we're being very sophisticated because, again, we're at war. But the question is, what is the strategy that we're having to deal with our war? And so I talked about Marcus Garvey earlier, where they was able to raise millions of dollars in poor economic times. How the hell we can't raise it now and there's more money? And I'm not trying to, I'm not going to pull an Umar and crucify you and where you ain't giving us no money. But however, we have to be able to create very legit things because people want to donate, but they want to know what they're donating to. But also, when we was building this, I didn't know everything. I'm a very impromptu dude. I figured some shit out and I jumped straight in.
Yes.
That's how I am. I didn't know the marketing plan. I didn't know none of that shit. I didn't waste time to even ask. I want this, I'm gonna figure it out. And I bring that up and critiquing myself is, who in my community that can help me in that way? And then you may not have the determination. I can help you with the determination, right? This is how we build, and this is how we create the legacy, because I can tell everybody in this room all the great shit I did as an individual. Repeat, as an individual. But can we talk about all the great shit we done together as a collective?
And I guess that's as we move into the next topic, I feel everything is so interconnected. Because, people will look at me the same way and say, wow, you did this, you did that. Everything I've ever done, whenever I involve more people, the success becomes more abundant, And I'm also like between the unity, it's also the patience too. Because that's the other thing that I do feel that's onboarded through this lens of capitalism. It's like the lack of patience and having an understanding that sometimes in that patience, brick by brick, as I say, building that wall brick by brick, right. It takes a longer time, but the foundation becomes stronger. It becomes almost something that can't be shaken as fast. When I think of the way we work together, right. We work together and I feel that the flow works well. And we've been working together for 10 plus years now, maybe 12, maybe longer than that. But it'll be like, you'll call with an idea. I do know you do work fast. Yusef's like, hey, let's do this tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, I don't know if I can do that tomorrow.
So when I first came home, Quasi used to call me the guy with many man of many ideas, right?
Yes.
He started screening my phone calls.
And it's funny that you bring up Quasi, because now I'm working with Quasi a little bit more, and I know he has a different flow. So as the three of us build a solution, and then we can welcome in others sometimes in that foundation. Because I've definitely
let's substitute that word solution, because that's a very tricky word.
Okay. Well, then let's say
it's liberation, man. This is again, we're substituting, and we're down when we think we're upgrading, we're really downgrading. And we're tricking ourselves out because of the society that we live in. We're trying to create language to try to coexist, but we're psyching ourselves out. Like with freedom, what we're fighting for freedom then is not the same freedom that we're talking about now. Like we've taken Black liberation and put it in a social justice framework. That's not Black liberation. By working at nonprofits and saying that we're holding political education classes, that we're getting millions of dollars from Skillman Foundation or Kellogg, whatever, it's still that's not independence. That's not self-determination. But also, to your point, like capitalism is a language. It's not only an economic system, it's a language system too. And let me hypnotize the language system. I'm the founder of the Mama Cool Community House. I'm the founder of such and such. Like, why do I need to say that? When everybody knows I'm the founder. But I need to say that because that's what the society tells me I need to express to make myself greater than anybody. Again, if everybody in this room, go back to the dynamic of working together, is helping me pull off something. We're helping each other. And the first thing everybody say, I'm the founder. How does it going to make you feel? Like, God damn, I ain't shit.
And that's where I would push back on you and say that even the term solution and founder, I don't have the same connotations connected to it, though I do understand
it's a European concept.
But
it's a European concept. That's the problem.
But English itself is a European concept.
It doesn't, but we have to figure out how to use it towards our greater good.
And I would say that the term solution and founder is still terms that I'm using that I believe at this point I'm executing for, as you say, a grander, you use the term grander because liberation.
Right. But let's look at the value though. The value of the terminology devalues everybody else. So again, if you're working by yourself, I think it'll fit. But if you're working with other people and you're trying to get other people involved, in which if I'm always beating the drum saying, I'm the founder, it's my shit, why would I want to work with you?
And I wouldn't perceive it in that nature. I would look at it like, I could see it's like anything that like the language can be triggering for others. So the same way that you say like, yeah, driving down Dexter can damn near bring about toxic shock for one person. I hear solution and I'm not triggered to think as though obviously it's implying as though I've been living without a solution. I see it different, but for this discussion, more so for the point, I was just painting the picture of me, you, and Quasi working together.
Absolutely.
And building brick by brick. The functionality and the utility and the way that we work together resourcefully, that's an understanding that builds over time. And I believe that leaving the door open for others to come into this, in that understanding respectfully of what we're building, and we have a door that's open for that. That's where we're exercising ourselves. We're exercising our capacity. We're exercising our understanding.
So this ties back into our conversation me, you, and Joe had last night. What is a critical thinker?
Yeah,
right? We all agree that we live in a society where people are taught what to think instead of how to think. I repeat, people are taught what to think and how to think. So if we all agree and believe in that, then we have to be self-aware of the things that we say. So again, if we throw the word solution out there and without as you eloquently has informed us, the nuances and the context, it leads to as if that's the absolute. That's what I'm saying by the absolute should be liberation. The absolute should be working together. Because the solution is leading towards that. So that's why I'm not saying we shouldn't use solution, but we should be careful how we use it because it can be misinterpreted from someone else. Because what we all get in this room, because I believe everybody in this room is active in some way, right? I'm gonna join you when you start, bro. No, that's what people like, yo, bro, sister, Lauren, I love what you're doing. Well, when you gonna come help me do it? And because we don't see ourselves in the struggle, I just see you part of the solution. So the goal is how do we expand it where other folks can see themselves part of that?
And I would say to that, definitely the context is needed, and giving those definitions. And that's where the political education, and I'm becoming more and more aware of the need for that political education as time goes. But my success, because I see all of my success tying into others, and that others is family, friends, my network,
right,
my community. I'm most at home there. So I don't see an individual success for me.
right.
I would see me being, it's like the turn of the new year. If I was on South Beach in the biggest condo, and chilling in Miami, I would not see that as success.
Right.
I see success as being on Clements in my neighborhood, connecting with my neighbors, my OGs, and then some of them, as you say, some of them are old heads, meaning they elders and may not have as much game to give,
right.
but sometimes the game is observed and not necessarily told. That's the success for me. And if that success is not given, because that's the place that I feel that I'm most at home, I'm most comfortable, it's more designed for me, and it's a place where we can build collectively together, then it ain't success. I see a lot of these other institutions as built and designed for what white success is. I was in one of those discussions. It's so funny with at the Bog Center, because I work with the Bog Center too, and they were discussing having a safe space. And the first thing I said is, as a black man in America, I don't even entertain no shit like that, because I don't think that a safe space exists for me as a black man in America. This is some ideology that you're putting on top of shit. Right. So that's me putting those words and that mirror and that same concept. But the closest thing to a safe space is my neighborhood, or what some may label as the hood.
Right. So, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us in this room feel safe in those spaces, right? But the problem is we're not examining what's creating those spaces. And so again, the solution is maybe the Mama Kua Community House is
liberation.
The Black Panther Party. Huey P. Newton said the breakfast program was not a solution. It's a means to the solution. It's not the solution. It's a means to the. So what do you mean by mean? It's the means by bringing people together. It's the means by serving the needs of the people. It's the means by through those means you help transforming. And also, I'll bring in what Fred Hampton talked about when the police was coming and harassing them and the families, the mothers, and saying, well, that's a communist program that they're doing. Those are socialists over there, right? And the mothers would say, I don't know what a communist is, nor do I know what a socialist is, but I know they're feeding my family. And if you try to remove that program, I'm going to do something to you. So remember what we said earlier, people learn through participation and observation. People don't remember what you said, but they remember how you felt. So through that process and through that program, they're being transformed. But as my comrade Quasi challenges me in those type of programs I do, where they just can't be charity. They can't be social welfare type of program. It has, again, that is a solution, but the ultimate solution is about power. And so hold up. So about power, and so in that power, again, with your homeboys, how do we transform that community to where, because to take ownership? Like when we had the urban network, one of my homeboys, may rest in peace, Roger, Julia, I think Putman, who runs the Ball Center School, right? Mm-hmm. We're very close. We was close then. We're still close. And she was coming to meet me at my other institution that was on Grand River McGraw. Over mind you, where the Olympia Stadium used to be. There's what they're now the Armor Guard. Yeah. Julia didn't get out of her car because she didn't feel safe because of the young black men that was standing in front of the store. And my homeboy Roger was part of that group. When I see him, I tell him, like, she didn't feel safe. He was highly upset. He was a fucking offended. Like, what do you mean she didn't feel safe, homeboy? Like, she didn't feel safe, bro. It wasn't that you was going to do anything, but it's the perception of what black men represents in the society, whether you did something or not. And so how do we change that perception? How do we change that perception? Because someone is communicating, as you in this field, in media, propaganda a certain images in our mind that is triggering. And some of it, again, what we know about myths, there's some truth and there's some bullshit to it. And what happens is we have to engage in it to figure out what is the truth to be able to eliminate the bullshit. The same thing when like in that same spot, we had the studio. The studio was a great tool to bring young brothers in. Going back to young folks, right? They all of them rapping their ass off. I'm talking about killing, murder, money macking murder, right? And I would come in and like, man, why you want to kill everybody? Why you selling dope? Explain to people why you had to kill or why you want to kill. Explain to people why you had to sell dope or why you want to sell dope. Not as if this is just the fucking norm. And the light went off. I'm not saying like you can't talk about it, but can you talk about it in a way that's going to educate someone, that you're going to invite them into your world? Because here's the thing so in the larger context of this world, have and have nots, we're talking about two different worldviews. We're talking about two different worldviews that are at odds with each other. And it's closer to those who are the have-nots. In reality, we all fucking have-nots. Some of us may just drive a little better car than someone else. Might be I live off of 8 Mile now. Don't live off on Zone 8, right? But in reality is, if I drive down 8 Mile, I'm liable to get pulled over just from driving down Black. It doesn't matter where I live in the fucking city because we know what happens over there. And until we are able to navigate through this bullshit, because there's this false reality that this is what capitalism does. What money does, it gives you a false reality as if shit changes. Like when Jay-Z gets his money in the thing that racism act that happened in New York and say, I'm just gonna buy the restaurant. Like that doesn't change the dynamics.
No.
That's a temporary situation. So at the end of the day, it's about analysis. What are the type of analysis that we're having, which comes out of our reading, comes out of our PE, political education classes, to be able to develop the type of frameworks to change the type of systems and dynamics to move things forward the way we want.
State of Black Detroit 2022 is brought to you by Detroit is Different. You can support Detroit is Different by liking, subscribing, and following Detroit is Different, the website, Facebook page, Instagram page. And also, remember, you can always give to Detroit is Different at Cash App, at Detroit is Different at the cash tag, and through PayPal.